and the camera's on, so we'll get started. Thanks for coming. I'll call to order the monthly meeting of the Hannaford Regional Technical School District for Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. I'd like to lead off with introduction of board members. And Lorraine, would you like to
I would love to.
start us?
Lorraine Morse, representative from the APSB.
Suzanne Barnes, representative from the ACSD.
John Schmidt, adult ed coordinator and co-op coordinator.
Nick Colston, ACSD.
Christina Macklin from NMWSD. Linda Barrett, clerk.
Dana Peterson, interim superintendent and director.
Jason LaRock, Workforce Investment Board.
Missy Beckwith, Workforce Investment Board.
Mark Kern, Workforce Investment.
Mike McGrath, Addison Northwest.
Allison Sturdivant, Melanie.
Michael Lawson, Workforce Investment Board.
Kelly Mills, assistant director, Hannaford.
Thank you, everyone. So you have in front of you the draft agenda. I have a few minor changes. After correspondence and before the consent agenda, I'd like to address board reorganization. Since this is our first meeting after town meeting day, and we have a few new members, plus it's time to redo our annual appointments. So we also, you'll see that there's an executive session needed tonight. That is actually for two independent personnel items. So, does anyone else have any adjustments or changes to the agenda? Not, I take a motion to approve the agenda as revised. All right, it's been moved and seconded by Mark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The agenda has been approved as revised. Next item would be visitor comments. Gretchen, do you have any?
Usually I do, but
Not today.
use them all up today.
Okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. Next item would be correspondence. Dana, do you have any correspondence you'd like to share with?
No formal correspondence for this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item would be to do the board reorganization. That'll consist of a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and committee appointments. So at this point, I'm going to step aside as board chair and turn it over to Mark Perrin to handle this.
I'm just going to stay seated here. Any nominations for chair?
I'll nominate Jason.
Okay, a second. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor of Jason as our next chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any indifferences? Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Next is to appoint a secretary, or a vice chair. Kim is not here tonight, but I believe she is willing to continue in that position if someone were to nominate her. So,
I nominate Kim for vice chair.
all right.
Second.
Is there any other nominations? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay. I'll let Kim know she's still the vice chair. Next position is board secretary. Do we have any nominations?
Current secretary.
I was afraid you were going to ask me that question. I think it's messy if I remember correctly.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought too.
I think it's me.
I think so.
See, all right.
Thank you for seconding.
I stand corrected.
So
busy that position is.
Right. So do we have any nominations?
Oh, yeah.
So I see that Allison's been nominated. Is there any, is there a second on
How
that?
do you like as, no, never mind.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All right, all those opposed signify by saying nay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for volunteering for that position. So we have three standing committees: facilities, budget and policy, and community outreach. Those are open meetings. We have do we have volunteers for the?
Can I make a recommendation that
You
you
most
just
certainly
put
can.
that out there, float that out, and get some
Yeah.
requests from board members, and next meeting, take that up?
Sounds good. So we will table that until next meeting. And
The only question is, between now and the next meeting, there is
two meetings.
two groups that may meet. That is not budget and policy, but it would be facilities and community outreach.
All right. Do we have volunteers for the community outreach committee? Kim currently was sitting on that. I
Yeah,
believe
she's
she wants
chair.
to continue. Anybody else? All right, I'll participate by default. So we have,
Kim and you.
yeah, two committee members there. Facilities, right now, Missy's interested. Nick? Any?
When does that mean?
Facilities, so let's take one step
When do
back.
they all meet?
So, budget and policy meets the
It's either
third,
or fourth.
the third,
Wednesday.
the third Wednesday, third or fourth Wednesday of the month.
At 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock. And that's been floating because, Mark has a state board commitment that sometimes interferes with the third. So it's the fourth. So it's the fourth, we're meeting on the fourth Wednesday of the month at 5 o'clock. The facilities committee meeting is at 7:30, the first Monday of the month
In the morning.
in the morning. And the community outreach meeting is the first Wednesday of the month
At what time?
at 5 o'clock. So the facility is the only one in the morning. So, budget and facilities, we have Missy, Nick,
So we are choosing.
we are choosing. Because we have those meetings that we need to be reorganized for.
Anybody can show up to those meetings.
Can, but the problem is, I've been told, which I vehemently disagree with, that we need a quorum of the appointed committee members at a committee meeting for it
In
to be.
order for it to be officially one meeting.
Yeah, so we have to know who those members are to establish whether we have a quorum or not.
Because other people are not, unless they're alternates, but if they're
Yeah.
not alternates, they can show up, but the whole public can show up, so.
Yeah.
In order to have it officially one meeting, you have to have a quorum of those appointed to that committee.
Will you call in?
Yes,
Okay. I'll be an alternate for the facilities,
okay.
but I have to call.
All right. And the last one would be community outreach, which last year was myself and Kim. Do we have any volunteers for that committee?
Possibly.
Okay.
What's that budget?
Community outreach.
Are there community members on that committee too?
No. No, it's a board committee.
Board subcommittee, yeah.
All right.
So, once
So-
again, Supervisor.
So facilities is
Missy, Nick.
Missy, Nick, and Mike is an alternate. Budget and policy is Kim, myself,
Kim's on budget and policy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
and then community outreach.
Budget and policy? No, you mean,
So some budget and policy, Kim's on that, and Mark. Kim's been showing up to those two.
No, community outreach.
Really?
Well,
All right, I'll show you how much I know. So,
you're just confusing
Yeah.
the community.
Being the newbie,
Yep.
can I ask
you sure
a
can.
question?
Yep.
Like, how many people are on these committees? What is the charge of the committee? What are they supposed to do? Yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
So, to know what to sign up for?
Yep, so, you probably haven't gotten a board packet yet. So, or your board orientation yet. So that makes it even more difficult. So, facilities, basically approves and or vets the spending of facilities money, before it comes to the full board. They have a.
Building reserve, a building
Yeah.
equipment reserve fund.
Yeah, but also other expenditures sometimes that fall outside of that. That committee, by our bylaws, has a spending authority of $15,000. Anything above that comes to the board for approval.
It has to go
But
to
it
bid.
still needs to go out to bid, even if it's under the 15. The Budget and Policy Committee helps with reviewing the budget before it comes to the full board. They also are charged with reviewing board policy, both statutorily required board policy, recommended board policy, and also the policies under policy governance. The Community Outreach Committee is a relatively new committee for us. It was established, probably 6 months ago. The intent of that is to kind of shape what our community outreach plan is and how we're engaging the community as a board. So they helped a little bit with some of the planning around the Makers Fair, very limited, and around, open houses. It's also about how we push out information in regards to the budget to the community.
So are there set numbers of members on each of those
No.
committees? Or?
No.
You've got to have more than 2 people, though. You said you just have a facilities committee with 2 people and an alternate? That's not enough.
We've had 3 and we've had 2 on those committees. We do not have set numbers on those committees. We never have, and under our rules, it hasn't been set that we have more than, we haven't set what those numbers are. Hence my comment about the quorum, because the committees aren't actually making any decisions. I get open meeting law, and I get that it needs to be, a quorum. That's why we're establishing the number of members. The quorum is going to be based on the number of members that volunteer for those committees.
You have to have at least 50% in order for a quorum to be constituted, so. If you have 4 members, you need 2. If you have 2 members, you need 1. If you have 3 members, you need 2.
So ideally, I'd like 3 on each committee, to be honest with you. And we don't have that right now. You are correct.
Are you staying on the committee?
I'll
Stay on facilities
So-
to get us up to 3. For some reason, I thought we had 4
Yeah.
people.
Well, when I'd been there, yeah, so if I can
But the
avoid.
chair can be ex officio on all of
Yeah.
the committees.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would like to be on a committee, however, I didn't think I was going to have to decide tonight, and I have a scheduling conflict I need to discuss with my husband. What?
We can add you later on.
Okay. I mean,
That's, the committee committee meetings are open to all board members and the public. So it's just that the next board meeting, we'll add you. It's simple enough. That work for everybody?
So facilities has Missy, Nick, Mark, and Mike as an alternate.
Yep.
Budget and policy,
Is Mark,
Mark, are you on budget and policy? Okay. And you?
me, and ideally we'd like a third. Possibly Lorraine.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, the committee will be constituted as it currently
Yep.
is, and possibly Lorraine. Okay.
And then the community engagement, Kim and I. And ideally, I'd like a third,
And Christina said possibly.
and Christine.
So,
So,
I mean, even if that's,
You can put me down.
and we can
Yeah,
add,
okay.
we'll add as need be. So,
Great.
ideally, 3, 4 members would be great.
So if you have 3 members and to get to 50%, how does that work?
you have to have 2.
As long as you have 2.
You have to have at least 50% of the committee.
So,
There are some people for our facilities that only show up like half a person at that time of day anyways, being the first.
The next items are consent agenda, which consists of the meeting minutes from February 14th, the monthly accounts payable for both March and April, which includes the adult program, revolving loans, and the director's orders. Do we have those numbers to share?
We do. So for March, our general fund, $78,867.50. Our revolving fund was $7,130.06. Again, that was for March. And for April, viewed today by Mark and I, general fund was $105,331.67, and the revolving fund was $7,530.95.
Okay. Now,
That was April.
okay, thank you. Now that you have those numbers, you have the meeting minutes in your board packet. Does anyone wish to remove either of those for further, or any of those items for further consideration? If not, the consent agenda is passed. Moving on to our action items. We have a monitoring report for policy 1.0, which is ends. And you'll see that in your packet. I'm going to turn it over to Dana to take questions and present any items that he wants to at this point.
It's a long report, so if you like, I can just hit a couple of highlights. In putting together this report, I used data from the state that's considered the formal agreed upon performance levels. That's something that's negotiated between the state and the federal government, otherwise known as FAUPL, F-A-U-P-L. And so the statistics that you see in there represent our performance compared to the target percent for attainment. And the first one on there is an area that we did not meet in terms of the state's expectations. The target was 60% of attainment in reading language arts based on SBAC administration. That's the 11th grade assessment that has happened in the sending schools. And our actual attainment for the concentrators, which are basically juniors, the first year program folks who are returning, was 36.32%. So we will be addressing that particular target and the attainment in our next Perkins plan.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So the SBAC, is that administered by the sending school as opposed
Yes.
to us?
It's not administered by us.
So we don't administer this, but we do report out on that?
Yes, it's an accountability measure that we are subject to.
So you're going to address it, you said,
In our Perkins plan.
in your Perkins plan? Okay.
We have to.
Right.
So in terms of the
Okay.
expenditures of our funds for areas that we did not meet the target, we have to have a plan for how to do that. So we have been working on that regardless of this statistic, so we will just have to be a little more specific in our criteria.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. The attainment was 60, I mean, the target was 60%, and we only came up with about 60% of that.
And the Perkins plan, this is for next year?
For next year, which I should have for you at the...
Is there a way that we can put a placeholder on this? Because I have no idea how we're supposed to meet a target like this. I mean, I might be naive about it, but these students aren't continuous in our school.
So let me address how we are trying to do it locally, and down by the latter third of the page, we have reading. I mentioned the NWEA data.
I mean, I would have the same questions for all these, more or less.
So let's go through the numbers,
Okay.
and then
That's all right.
we'll
So
address your
with
concern.
respect to NWEA, which we have administered, and I think Kelly referenced in her report, I was able to pull some data from the most recent assessment. We didn't have a chance to compare it with previous assessments. But all of our students, if we take all of our students across all of the programs, pre-tech and technical students as combined, Our reading attainment is almost 60% of our 50 percentile identified target, and almost 50% in math. Both of those, if they were translated into the FOPL scores, would have met the target, so that we have an extra point of comparison. And the state is currently in dialogue with us about an alternative assessment to SBAC that we can use. And we have proposed that we use the NIWI data. And we may be piloting 2 different types of data for this for next year, NIWI and another assessment. Different centers might have the option. So we're hoping that we can, and we can use this data for reporting out. It reflects a little bit differently on how our students are performing. Thank you. You can look at some of the others. I just felt that one needed a little bit of attention because it was the only indicator that we did not meet. I will say I'm proud of the technical skills attainment, where we had 81% of our concentrators meet that criteria, and it was well above the state target. Later in the report, I reported on the number of credentials that were earned, 120 earned by completers and/or concentrators in FY17 for the secondary students, and 122 credentials earned by the adult ed students. And then I took a lens data and reported on the average cost for getting some kind of a certificate. It's a bit of a fictitious number, but $1,116, with a low of $100 for a CDL certificate and a high for a CDL. For a forklift certificate, $100 for a forklift, and a high of $5,200 for a CDL license. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for Dana? That's a lot of data to look at.
If you'd like to provide feedback at the next meeting about the format, the presentation, the type of the data, let me know, and I'll be happy to customize future reports according to your needs.
Hearing, if we don't have any other questions, I'd take a motion to accept.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, the monitoring report has been approved. Our next monitoring report is a monitoring report for policy 2.0, which is the global executive constraint. This is left over from the March meeting, which we did not have. And it's in your March packet. I'm going to turn it over once again to Dana. Field any questions or speak to it if you'd like.
I offered a fairly simple couple of paragraphs about what work has been, we've been engaged in, and in terms of trying to meet the expectations of the global constraints. Just want to say that I've striven to build a climate of trust and collaboration, open budget process, good communication, collaborative decision-making, and building partnerships with the community, including entrepreneurs, Middlebury College, and Addison County Economic Development, moving us forward towards our vision. Try to provide a model for professional practice and not place us in any jeopardy with respect to financial operations. So, if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Nick?
How much is the line of credit that we're not using? Do you remember?
Line of credit. I should know the figure, but that's Gibson's area. I want to say 800,000. And, oh, we didn't use nearly. Gretchen, do you know that? What the line of credit?
1.3.
Yeah.
What's
The
that?
line of credit limit is 1.3. We
One point-
used under.
1.3 million? Okay. Thank you.
And we don't use them.
No, I think we've used 200,000 maybe on the line of credit?
No, we used just under 900,000.
We used just under 900,000. Okay, thank you.
But it's all paid back. It was paid back January.
Okay.
We use the line of credit to cover operating expenses in
Until
lieu
the-
of- in lieu of payments.
Yeah.
So,
And in fact, the management by Gibson and Gretchen of that line of credit has actually helped us to reduce our overall costs. So there's been budget savings as a result of their good management. So the 800,000 must have been what I was thinking we used as opposed to what we had.
All right.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Dana on the monitoring report for 2.0? Okay. Hearing none, I'd take a motion to.
Move.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. And the motion is carried. Next item, monitoring report for policy 2.3, financial conditions and activities, and that would be in your April packet. This is a quarterly report. I'm going to turn it over to Dana once again to speak to this report and field any questions.
Call your attention to number 1, the actual expenses for the quarterly report, $2,259,362, which represents 65% of our operating budget. Cash flows, number 2, as Gretchen said, does not expect to have any further use of the line of credit since it's all been paid back. Number 3, the only use is for the BERF, Building Equipment and Reserve Fund. And number 4, there was an interfund transfer of $107,168, which represents what the taxpayers authorized as a transfer to the BERF fund as a result of the surplus from operating budget FY16. I don't think this is anything else. Yes, number 7, we had a payment from the BERF of $24,900 made to Carolina Bus Sales. That it was in excess of the $5,000 that we have authorization, that I have authorization to allow, and that was based on a previous vote of the board to accept the bid, went through the formal bid process. So that's just accounting for that. You don't have anything else that's noteworthy, so unless you have any questions? Yes, Kelly?
I'd like to point out in the first section, it's written 2,259 and 362 cents. So I think there's a decimal point where there should be a comma.
Yep, right here. So there's a decimal point there, it should be a comma.
Oh. I read it without even skipping a beat. I did circle it, but thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Any questions on the report? At this point, take a motion to approve.
I'll move it.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? A second, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The motion is carried. I apologize for jumping back and forth between these two packets, but the next one is, next monitoring report is policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. This is from your March packet. Once again, I will turn it over to Dana to present and field questions.
So with respect to the risk incurred number 1 that Gibson put together, there are no conditions or situations that would place us at risk. With respect to omitting creditable protection of revenues. Gibson notes that all of our state and federal funds received by the districts are direct deposited from the Agency of Ed. That any expenses of the district utilize a purchase requisition and a purchase order system that ensures that all of expenditures have gone through a process of pre-approval and guaranteed sufficient funds are available. And I review all of those. And you can ask Gretchen, I read every single purchase before I sign it. Final thing, number 3, provide less for board prerogatives during the year than is set forth in governance investment. And I'll just point out in paragraph 2, to ensure the credible protections of revenues and expenses, the superintendent and business manager have encumbered $19,899 in funds from the FY18 budget year to cover the shortfall in revenue conditioned by the special legislative session in June 2019. We also have recommended that we create a reserve fund of $50,000 that was part of town meeting. The allocation would be to protect us for the health reimbursement arrangement. And then we asked for $25,000 to be allocated to the BER fund for next year. So those are the only highlights that I feel need to be pointed out in the report that we put together last month.
Any questions on the report? Right. Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the monitoring report for policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion is carried. Next, we have 2 policies. We'll deal with them separately. These policies have been vetted through both facilities and through the Budget and Policy Committee. So the first one is policy KGA, which is specialized equipment and machinery use. That's in this month's packet. This is a excuse me. This is a new policy. It'll get approved on its second read. This is the first reading of that policy. It is historically this has been quasi covered under the community use of school facilities policy KG. So
It might be helpful if, Dana, you go through and talk about the kind of the hoops that we sent you through to get to this end result.
All right, I'll try to be...
Because you did quite a bit of work.
Thank you. As Jason mentioned, we had one policy that we've, as a result of some of the confusing language and the inconsistencies within the policy itself, being both equipment and facilities, under recommendation for me trying to work with folks outside of our building, it came to my attention that we really needed to have 2 separate policies. So I contacted the SBA and BISBIT just to see what we should do, and then I reported to Budget and Policy, and they gave me the charge of drafting something, bringing it back to them. So I took the essence of both of those policies, maintained them, looked at it for security and liability purposes, and then put in language that I thought would be helpful in communicating the liability to anybody who's using our equipment and the need to have both a waiver as well as a certificate of coinsurance. So we went through all of those processes, brought those back, and now you have in each one of your packets both the policy itself, which is usually the first page or 2, then some terms and conditions that go along with it, which includes a list of the equipment and the fee schedule, and then we have the waiver of indemnification. Not part of the policy, but it's a cross-reference. So the reason that we have it separated, it was all part of one policy, but we pulled out the terms and conditions so that we can change those as needed at the building level without having to come back to the board for changes because it's no longer part of the policy. And then our waiver of indemnification is also outside of the policy, but we make sure that that's been vetted by both VSBA and the SBA. And they have said, they've given us their approval in terms of us sending them the documents, making sure that we're following the appropriate procedures in terms of liability and any concerns people would have with respect to how the policy is stated. So right now what you have in front of you is the equipment use that states what the obligations are in terms of use, rental, whatever, and the condition, and the any of the cross-references that we have there. And then everybody who wants to use either equipment or the facility has to sign a waiver of indemnification, which you have on the back. And then we have our fee schedule, which can change based on going rates and so forth. I hope that was succinct.
And I might add that one of the things we did also is we tried to plug in as many different ideas, potential groups that might be using this, from professional to
community members,
like
volunteer
4-H, or is it sugar makers on a Saturday, which are around, and all kinds of different groups to see if it made sense. So
test drive it.
We did really try and test drive it, and it looks as good as we think we can get it at this stage of the game.
And this process has been going on for these two policies for better part of 6 months.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Fair statement.
August or September, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kicked out of facilities, right, at one point?
Right.
To budget policy.
Okay. So any questions on the policy?
So does this pertain to just this one piece of equipment?
There are two pieces.
Two pieces of
But
equipment.
it doesn't pertain to any other equipment that's owned by the
Correct.
school at the moment?
It doesn't. And if those are standalone units that can be borrowed separately, the others are part of our facilities, and we have that covered under heavy labs.
One of the things that we weighed in this is, we have since this equipment's all purchased with community money, we have to make it available for educational purposes. There's, skid steer, an excavator, a variety of stuff. And what we're trying to do is, so we have a responsibility to allow that to be used for educational purposes, but we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer to make sure that it's used responsibly, and it's not at my house digging ditches. So how do you balance that? And we had these two items were the two items that were leaving campus. That the one that we purchased or constructed for a specific purpose. And we're doing some cost sharing with VTC, and I believe in was it Riverside Tech?
Might be.
There was another career and technical center that was using it. The mobile flash freezer was given to us, but it was purchased with state money. And there's we have a slightly different obligation under that gift agreement, and who can use that for what it's worth.
And we wanted to actually see how the policy would play out using these two pieces of equipment, knowing that we can add other pieces as needed along with a fee schedule. But since these were the two pieces that had the most demand in terms of use by community members, we figured that we'd start there. And since it's not part of the policy but part of the procedures, we can add other pieces of equipment as needed without it being a cumbersome.
I was just wondering, are these the kind of policies you would have the lawyers look at, or is there lawyers for this?
Yeah, VSBA actually, not VSBA.
And VSBA,
And,
both
of them looked at
from a legal
this.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, but we did have, that was, VSBA came back to us most recently. They passed it by their legal team in terms of vetting it. And
But do we have lawyers?
We do.
Too, but so there are particular lawyers.
given the fact that the policies were already existing,
Yeah.
and we were just making amendments, it wasn't a brand-new policy. If it's a new policy and VSBA has a model policy, they have already been vetted
Okay.
by the legal team at VSBA. We were just having this reviewed for consistency, and we got the okay saying that it was well constituted. So,
So, do we have a,
This is just a thing,
Yeah.
that both of these things that the people have to sign for the waiver and then the
Application, yep.
thing for the, both of these, the you say Hannaford at the top of the page, the A is a small a, so it should be fixed.
oh,
You're right.
yep,
Good eye.
I think that was Gretchen's fault.
I'll make sure Emily knows.
so, do we have a motion to approve this policy? It's been moved. It's been seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, next. I apologize. We're not approving this.
Great.
Oh, that's right.
Proving.
It'll get approved at the next meeting.
It's being warned.
This is just for our information. We'll bring it back up at the next meeting for approval. I got ahead of myself. I apologize.
But one can be approved now.
Yes.
It was approved for one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, we're not taking that one up yet. We're now taking up policy KG, which is the community use of school facilities policy. This is a revised policy. It's not a new policy, so this will get approved tonight on its first reading.
Okay.
So once again, this is set up similar to the one we just looked at, where the list of facilities and the fee schedule, as well as the indemnification waiver, minus the capital A,
Yep.
is separated out, so that if there needs to be tweaks to that, it can be tweaked. It's not part of the policy, it's supplemental to the policy, so it doesn't have to come back to the full board for approval. This has been cut down considerably from its original format, just because it did have the contents of KGA, or a portion of those contents with it. So, Dana, if you want to speak to the process and what we hope to achieve.
Sure, what we did was we took the essence of the original policy and captured that, we tightened it up a little bit, and it was basically in the general guidelines part of the policy that we made some of those changes to make it a little bit shorter and clearer. So let me just highlight a couple of things. First of all, we said that, allowing people to be using the facilities was not an endorsement by us, that we agreed with the particular group to come here. Number 3, we put in place the certificate of insurance of liability, and we specified the $1 million as a check with our insurers, that's what should be the minimum, and so that when they have a certificate of co-insurance, that's what they have to prove. And then there's that they have to have that with the application that they turn in. Number 4, it references the waiver indemnification and hold harmless, which is the last page. That was stated, but it wasn't as clearly obvious. And then on the back page, we indicated that they would need to perhaps have police protection depending on the type of event. And we listed all of the specific policies that were cross-referenced. So previously, it just said that any person that is using the facilities must adhere to all of our policies, period. But there was no reference to what those policies were, and we thought that it was really important for people to know the specific policies. That way they could request copies of those policies to know that they were in compliance. We left, I think, the list of facilities, fees, and schedule pretty similar. If we changed something, it was only by a couple of dollars to make them consistent.
Any questions for Dana? All right, hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept this policy?
So moved.
Been moved, is there a second? Thank you, Nick. So it's been moved and seconded to accept policy KG, community use of school facilities. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, this revised policy has been approved. That brings us to that wraps up the action item, or action portion of our agenda. Under informational agenda, we have the facilities report. You'll see in your, actually maybe in both of them. You'll see in your March packet and in your April packet, meeting minutes for the facilities committee meeting. It was held March 5th and also on April 2nd. I'm gonna let the chair of that committee field any questions or present any highlights that she wishes.
I think we're in a good place with the projects that are ongoing and good progress on the items that were pointed out by the VISBIT audit and the grants that were received. The camera system is being, that project is moving along. Are there specific questions?
For background information, I don't know if the board is fully aware, but we have received $10,000 in grant funding from VISBIT, Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust, as a result of the work that we did with safety and security audits. And so that money has been applied to some of these upgrades.
And it's important to note that that's been an ongoing process. We had that audit done,
Back in,
Yeah,
was it October?
something like that.
it started in October, yep.
And that $10,000 was a welcome surprise. I was not expecting that, so. Any other questions for the facilities committee? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the budget and policy committee meeting minutes. Once again, you have two of those as well. There was the, let's see, the February 28th meeting and the March 28th meeting. One in each of your packets. Turn it over to the chair of that committee to field any questions. That'd be you.
I'm not chair of that.
I'm not chair of that committee either, so.
I'll answer any questions you want.
I can as well, I guess, so.
By default, I guess I would.
Yeah. So, as you can see, one of the items we've been addressing is the equipment policy. We've started some conversations around our class size policy, which we've had a policy that we need to refresh. So we're working on that. We'll continue that work probably this month, hopefully with a policy to come to the board shortly thereafter. Any questions for the Budget and Policy Committee?
I might want to just add, Jason, that we're doing monthly reports on the progress of the budget. So Gretchen Gibson provide me with a monthly report, status report on where we are with respect to expenditures. So we mentioned earlier that we had the financial conditions quarterly report. We're actually tracking those on a monthly basis, which gets reported to Budget and Policy.
Okay. Any other questions? Next would be the superintendent's report. Once again, you have two of those too. Surprise, surprise. I'm going to turn it over to Dana to speak to the highlights of his superintendent's report.
So what I'm going to do, except for the Maker Faire, which was listed as the opening report in the March superintendent's report, I'm going to focus on some of the other things. I'm very proud of our relationship with three Middlebury College students. They call themselves the STEAM Girls. They were actually present at the Open House Maker Fair, and they were looking for a place to do some work, continue work that they had done in the summer, during the school year, and they're actually meeting on Friday afternoons from 3:15 to 5 o'clock, and they're meeting with a group of up to 14 elementary school female students from Mary Hogan, and they are working on STEAM activities, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I'm pleased to report that they started out with doing animation and graphics with the young people, and they invite me in to see what they produce at the end of each session. And so they started out with animation, they moved on to robotics and some coding, and they're now making plans to work on possibly some 3D printing. And we have a senior young man in our engineering program who has agreed to work with them on using the 3D printers to help them be able to share that work with their young charges. So that's in the works either for this week or for next week. And what I'm most proud of is that we have a whole continuum of students that start well before they get to our building. It involves some of our current students, and it takes it to the college level, and that's nothing, I couldn't be more proud of that inter-age group participation. So, on another note, we have a transition from our provider, third-party provider for the administering our flexible spending account and our health reimbursement arrangement. The company that took it on was very competent in doing the flexible spending previously just by themselves, took on the HRA for most of the groups across the state, and it was too much. So future planning gave notice that they would not be able to continue that service, and so we are looking to shift to DataPath. That was the recommendation of Visbit, and Gibson and I signed a contract to convert from future planning to DataPath. DataPath is the actual provider of the software that future planning was using. So they are competent, and they're providing state support in a couple of other states, but they're based out of Arkansas, and they've been doing the similar work for the state of Arkansas for a while. So I just wanted to let you know that that's happening. The Maker Minds meeting has adopted a name called the Makery, and they may change that a little bit, but here at the Career Center, and they also adopted a mission and vision statement. And along those lines, I want to indicate that group put us on to the possibility of applying for a grant, $100,000 grant, and we now have a link to our personal page for collecting donations to be eligible for a $100,000 grant. And I will send out a link to you directly. I think I sent it out as to the leaderboard that they had before we had our actual individual page. We now have an individual page, and you can point anybody that would be interested in helping us make our $6,000 target to be eligible for the $100,000 to make a donation. They accept credit cards and a variety of payments. So that's one. There are two other grants. Len probably has spoken about the McClure Foundation grant, so I won't say more about that. It is in my report as well. But for $25,000, they just submitted that. Is that right, Len? You just submitted your grant. And then the final one is we did a pitch over at Middlebury College, and when I say we, Professor Noah Graham from the physics department, Dave Cole, who's a machinist on Route 7 South, and myself, building on the idea that the STEAM girls had in having a couple of Middlebury College students get embedded in our programs, or in the Makery, both as mentors to younger folks, but also learners and working with older adults. And so we're pretty proud of that, and we're hoping that we'll be getting some pilot funding. So we made our pitch today, we made it to the second round, and the presentation was rather well received. So we're hoping to be able to report more on how that continuum from younger learners up to college students and even the adult learning community can be focused here at the Hannaford Career Center. So That's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. Well done. Any questions for Dana? All right, thank you, Dana. Next on the agenda is the Dean of Students Report. I'll turn it over to Ms. Mills.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Couple things. We had 9 students attend the Skills USA competition up in the Burlington area, as well as Necky and at Vermont Tech. And we had students in the medical professions area, automotive, diesel, let's see, 2 culinary and industrial design. And our industrial design students, Joe Norton received gold, and Addison Goodyear received silver. And Chelsea Jerome received a bronze medal in the basic health care. So we're really proud of those 3. Out of the 3 of them, Joe Norton is eligible to go to the national competition, which will be in Louisville in June, and he hasn't decided if he's going to go. So if he decides not to go, the opportunity defaults to Addison, who got the silver medal. And the same goes for Chelsea. She would be 3rd in line if the 2 people who placed ahead of her choose not to go to the national competition. So that was pretty fun. The second thing is tomorrow night, Friday night, and Saturday night and I have to read it because I can never remember the title of our play. It's our main stage production for Addison Repertory Theater and Steve Small's final main stage production, as he's retiring at the end of the year. And it is entitled The Farndale Avenue Housing Estate Townswomen's Guild Dramatic Society Murder Mystery. Let's see if I can't remember it.
Why can't you remember?
And the kids can't either. They're like, but it is hysterical.
It's a murder mystery. That's all I can
right.
remember.
It's a murder mystery. And I poked my head in and watched them rehearse, and it's going to be hysterical. So they're working hard, and I'm looking forward to going to tomorrow night's production. So if you choose to go, it's highly recommended you call ahead of time. It's in your packet of what telephone number to call to reserve your tickets. $10 for adults and $7 for students. And the biggest news is we have narrowed down, meaning the search committee for our new Addison Repertory Theater instructor, which is consistent of Lisa Rader, who is our design and illustration and visual communications instructor, 2 members of the advisory committee, Don Wagner, who's an alum from the original first-year class of Addison Repertory Theater when the classroom was in this room, painted entirely black, and Karen Lefko, who is a parent of one of our current students, as well as a stage actor in the area. And then 2 current students, one from the technical theater program and the other from the performance theater program. So we've narrowed it down to 2 finalists. One of the finalists is from out of state and emailed us videos of teaching technical theater as well as performance theater. We're very favorably received. And then the other individual will be coming in, yet to be determined, next week to teach a lesson in each technical theater and performance theater. So we're hoping right after break we'll be able to recommend the candidate that we choose as number 1 to Dana, and we'll go forth from there. So stay tuned for our May meeting. Hopefully we'll have an announcement for you. Oh, the pool of candidates was incredible. We had 14 applicants. Very, very rich, very rich. It was a tough decision, and it was gratifying because it's been quite a while since we've had such a deep pool of candidates to choose from. So really, really pleased about that. And many people, when they interviewed, said this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, because we're one of the only programs in the state. So this is a really highly valued, highly sought-after position. People want to work with students in the arts, and this is a way to do it. So. Pretty
Excellent.
pleased about that.
Any questions for Kelly? So that seems like a pretty interesting process.
It was.
Historically, have we done that depth of committee in looking at filling roles?
It's varied depending on the position as well as whoever happens to be chairing that. I chaired it. Lisa and I put our heads together with Steve, and the 3 of us put together the team, and I think it's really been a rich experience for everyone. And it's been nice to work with some different people too. You know, I didn't really know Karen or Dawn, and it was excellent to work with the students and give them that opportunity. And actually, it's just funny that it turned out this way. Both of the students that were chosen for this committee are from Virginians, and they were on the hiring committee for Jay Stetzel's position. He is the recently former assistant principal. He's going back into the guidance office. So they had a little bit of experience, but the questions those students asked, and it was just how they handled themselves throughout the whole interview process, very professionally. They understood the whole concept of confidentiality and how important this was, especially when their classmates as well as other people in the community could possibly be asking them some pretty direct questions about what's going on, and they've handled it unbelievably well. Very, very proud of them. And those candidates that we've interviewed, whether it's via Skype or in person, I mean, that's one of the first things they've said as we've wrapped up the interview is, we can't believe how poised these students are.
Right.
So it's very incredible.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yes.
It's great to hear. Any additional questions for Kelly?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next would be the Adult Tech Ed report. I'll turn it over to Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Jason.
It's all yours.
I want to mention two things that I neglected to put in the report. I mentioned that the clinicals at Helen Porter had been suspended due to flu outbreak, probably because that's been a nightmare for yours truly. But what I forgot to mention is that Hannah Tavis, who was a mother of two that was in the Parent-Child Center cohort that did our LNA class 2 years ago, after she got her LNA, she had 4 different job offers and took a position at Rutland Regional Medical Center in their oncology unit, and was recently nominated by Rutland Regional Medical for a National Daisy Award, which is a
Wow.
excellence in nursing award. So very proud of her. I mentioned in the other developments, Bill H909, which is before the legislature, which I think is a very positive workforce development bill that is has language that addresses both secondary CTE programs and adult CTE programs. What I didn't mention is that separate from H919 is a funding proposal for, I'm not sure where it's going to end up, between $250,000 and $500,000 for adult technical education to buy equipment that would ideally be shared among adult technical education programs. So, for instance, one of the things that we're looking at as a possibility is HVAC oil burner service technician equipment that would be trailer mounted and could then go from tech center to offer adult ed HVAC training. So I couldn't be happier with the policy that you were looking at tonight, because I think it directly addresses the potential to have, to have tech centers own other pieces of equipment that would be shared, and the need for policy and insurance and that kind of thing to facilitate that. So thank you for your work on that. Questions? That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I never ceases to amaze me what's happening in adult tech ed. And I think you really need to have some kudos for bringing it, moving it forward as you have. So, and the more we can offer, the better it is. So, thank you very much. So, I'd like to address policy 4.1, governing style. Then we'll go into the executive session and adjourn after that. I'm not anticipating that we're going to be taking any action out of executive session. So, do we have a volunteer to speak to policy 4.1?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
There's no format. So let's see, quite a few things. I think that we were very on task tonight and covered 2 meetings in the time that we normally cover 1. So thank you, Jason, for keeping us moving.
I don't expect that on a regular basis.
Now you've set the bar,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was
You know
afraid
you
of.
can do it.
Fair enough.
And then to Dana, Len, and Kelly, fantastic job with the reports. And there's so many accomplishments within those reports. And I know it's just a snapshot of what you do every day, but from a year and a couple months since I first started, I really feel like there's a lot of efforts to make sure that the Career Center stays viable in our community. And I feel like there's been a lot of progress in that area. So I'm proud and excited about the future.
Thank you.
So is that acceptable?
That is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
For purposes
For
of.
personnel purposes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So I'd like Dana to stick around for the first portion of that executive session. But other than that, just board members.
Okay, thanks.